Now, here at your election headquarters, we don't only focus on issues regarding Ghana's politics, but in the sub-region as well. Mali's President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita has resigned after being detained by soldiers Tuesday. In a televised address on the country's state TV, Mr. Keita said he was also dissolving the government and parliament. Earlier on Tuesday, the mutinying soldiers took control of the Keita camp. There has been anger among troops about pay and continuing conflict with jihadists, as well as widespread discontent with the former president. Let's get some analysis from Colonel Festus Abuaji, retired. Thank you so much for joining the show, sir. As a lecturer on peacekeeping, following the timeline of this Mali crisis, we understand that this started as early as 2018 following the re-election of President Ibrahim Boubacar. The ECOWAS tried to intervene. In fact, they laid out a roadmap to maintain peace in the area because there were demonstrations and all. What does this say, this current incident, say about the strength of ECOWAS in resolving political issues of its member states?
Well, first of all, let me instead welcome you. I realize that you disappeared from the media space for quite a while, so you're welcome.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me.
Great.
Now, the Mali situation may not necessarily be a benchmark to judge whether ECOWAS is doing well enough or not. But one could, argue along that way. In terms of the analysis of the conflict, we need to bring into the debate the historical factor that Mali, for all the wrong reasons, happens to be highly unstable, and indeed has been unstable just shortly after independence. If my data is correct, this is about the third coup that Mali is having. And one worrisome dimension of this coup is that whereas the first coup occurred 8 years after independence, and it took over 20 years to have the second coup in 1991, now you had the coup by Captain Sanogo, if I recall correctly, in 2012. And then about 8 years later, you have another coup. The only difference being that 92 was by a captain, this time is by a colonel and a general. So that's one side of the debate. The other side is the linkages or interlinkages between the incidents of the coups and rebellions and jihadism and ethnic conflicts in some parts of the country. So the mix of factors make Mali highly unstable. And then you add to that mix questions around good governance and corruption, which are featured prominently in the grievances that inform the opposition to demand the exit of IBK, as you mentioned. And ECOWAS trying to find the middle ground through two diplomatic interventions, first by former president of Nigeria, Jonathan, and then the other interventions by a group of, presidents and so on, including our own, to say that could you have a government of national unity as an interim? But this was rejected by the opposition, who demanded that, look, IBK was beyond redemption because of the degree of corruption and his inability to address the rebellion in the Azawad area, which is worsening, as we know, and now has spilled over.
Hello, Colonel.
Into Burkina Faso. So ECOWAS used the diplomatic tools. Yes. Hello? Hello?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Unfortunately, we don't control the internet. But I'm saying that ECOWAS as required, has deployed the diplomatic tools. As the case stands now, I'm not sure whether the government of national unity should be or would be on the table. It may very well be that there has to be early elections. But let's also recognize that ECOWAS and the African Union and the UN and the international community, particularly France, have over the period tried to deploy conflict management tools. So ECOWAS was there in 2013 in the wake of the rebellion and the Tuareg uprising and so on and so forth, handed over to the AU, which established AFISMA, and then AU shortly transitioned the AFISMA to the UN, which is the MINUSMA, which is currently in place, a very large peacekeeping force. And all of these deployments have been backstopped by the French, which in 2013 deployed Operation Serval and reclaimed the territory that the jihadists had, taken from the state. And then subsequently has Operation Barkhane, quite a large French force with very serious capabilities. Then you add to that the regional intervention initiative in the form of what we call the G5 Sahel, which now brings Mauritania and Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger and Chad to try and hold the jihadists at bay in that belt.
Right.
Now, all of these, it does appear, are not quite delivering peace and stability in the case of Mali. So we need to continue with the conversation and find solutions or mechanisms that will help.
Colonel.
This coup worsens the situation a great deal,
You've mentioned the influence of rebel groups and terrorist ones as well. We haven't heard from the interim military government that has taken over. But do you see an end in sight, even if Mali holds elections without dealing with the presence of these rebel and terrorist groups? Are we ever going to see an end in sight to this?
Maybe not in the short term. Now, we need to recall that in 2012, the grievance that Captain Sanogo used was that the state of Mali had sent them to go and fight the jihadists without adequately equipping them or resourcing them and not adequately remunerating them. It may very well be that this type of military grievance is at the core of this current coup. So we need to hear from the coup makers, the colonel and the general, who should tell the international community what their plans are in terms of restoration of normalcy, the governance aspects, and then their plans for addressing this Tuareg issue. But when you take the Tuareg issue coupled with the insurgency or jihadism and so on, it's quite a complex mix, and I don't think while the military government currently, headed by these two senior officers, are trying to establish or consolidate their rule, they can immediately address the question of the instability in the Azawad and or the instability, ethnic instability or conflict between the Dogon, the Bambara, and the Fulani people in the central part of Mali. They need to be given a bit of time, but they don't have time. So as ECOWAS and the AU are doing, they need to now engage, and try to find some working solution. Now, the restoration of a civilian rule would not necessarily address the conflict issues that confront Mali, but it will help, probably, more than the kind of instability that the coup itself now throws into the equation.
Finally, Colonel, do you see a spillover? I mean, we know that like with the case of Mali, it's been simmering since 2018. And there are other African countries that have some form of political tension. Do you think this will send a cue or set a bad precedence in recent times?
Well, to draw any such conclusion, one needs to look at the factors of the context of the conflict. Now, immediately what comes to mind is the irredentism around the Tuareg rebellion, which emanates from the inability or the unwillingness of the state of Mali after independence to consolidate a devolved government for the Tuaregs. You see, so that factor of irredentism, the Tuaregs in Mali wanting to join up with the Tuaregs in Niger and Tuaregs elsewhere, is something, for instance, that we in Ghana need to take seriously, because it has synergies or it has some linkages with the question of Western Togoland and the dimension of Ewe irredentism, that Ewes in Ghana and Ewes in Togo. And when I say Ewes in Ghana, I mean some Ewes, precisely those who subscribe to the Western Togoland agenda of, I think, Papavi, I've forgotten his full name. So that's one dimension. Now, the non-delivery of socio-economic
Too bad. Kenna was making a point about Ghana taking a cue from what's happening in Mali now. Too bad the technology failed us. But we've been talking about the situation in Mali and how it plays out in the sub-region. Let's come back home.